So we now move to California. Hello, Patricia.
Hello, Lucas. I'm sitting in El Granada, California, which is about 20 miles south of San Francisco on the coast. It's a little fishing village.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
So
thank you very much to zoom in, so to say. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
I'd be glad to. And well, I've spent most of my life as in education. I was on the faculty at Stanford for almost 30 years. And I've been I was going to say I've been a teacher, but I agree with Aretha that no one really teaches improvisation. So I've been involved in education and working with students, mainly at the university level for some years. I'm a traveler and I'm interested in things related to Eastern thought and ideas. And I'm a watercolor artist. And I suspect that one of the reasons that I've been kindly invited here, thank you for making me part of this really glorious seminar of educators, is a book that I wrote, Improv Wisdom, which was published in 2005, sort of during the Punic Wars. One of my purposes in life is to try to be useful to others using the things that I've learned, both in the classroom and out of the classroom. So that's sort of some basic things about me. What else would you like to know today?
Thank you very much. I think it's like 10 years ago when I have read your book, and because I was so intrigued about improvisation and wisdom, that sounds great. And then I started reading that and I saw like you were trying to become a professor, and you did a lot, and then you did not succeed. And then you further worked on it. And I thought like, wow, that sounds really astonishing to really work hard, try your best, fail, write about that, and become very successful. So what was the story to start with improvisation wisdom?
All right. Well, that's exactly right. I was trying to do all the right things at my university, Denison. That was my first teaching job, and I was hoping to get tenure, but somehow I was doing all the things that the university wanted me to do, being on the right committees and just trying to kind of follow what was the academic path. And then they got to that fateful day where they decide up or down, and they said, no, thank you, Ms. Ryan. I'm sorry, you've done a nice job, but I remember the words, your work lacks intellectual distinctiveness. So good luck and go on. But what I said in the book, that they were right. They were right to let me go because I hadn't been really following any sort of prompting or any sort of light or interest. There were things that interested me, but I was doing things for the university. And so the lesson, of course, from that was follow your wonder. And so I was surprised, but while not getting tenure, I got another job at Penn State University the next year, which was kind of marvelous to get a university position. And I promised myself that I would always try to follow that wonder. And it took me into teaching acting there at Penn State. And then after 2 years, I got invited to come to Stanford to head up their undergraduate acting program. And at this point, improv had not really entered my life, but it became the story of how it came to Stanford is I was trying to figure out how to work with incredibly bright, talented students who could produce almost anything if you asked them what you wanted. But if I said to an actor, well, what would you think? How would you feel in that situation? They often sort of had a deer in the headlights look. They didn't know how to answer that. They weren't in touch with their own feelings and emotions and thoughts and ideas. And so as an acting teacher, I had to find some way to release the human being inside of these wonderful young actors who were stuck in their head. And as often is the case, there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And at that point in my life, Keith Johnstone, the wonderful theater educator and author of the most marvelous book, Improv, Keith came into my life he was invited to come to a Tai Chi workshop at Esalen. I had followed my wonder, and I was doing Tai Chi all over the world and having a good time. And Keith Johnstone appeared, and his book came to me, and his book changed my life, because he said there was a way to keep teaching acting that wasn't about conflict, that wasn't about yes, no, how to knock your partner down, that it was about a way of building on the trust. And so I started studying Johnstone's ideas. I went and worked with him a little bit in Canada, and I came back and started playing some of the games in my classroom. And it was wonderful. The more I used improvisational ideas and games, and I brought out my textbook of, this is a first edition of Viola Spolin's book. So thanks to Aretha for talking about this. I realized I need to fix the binding here. So I started using improv in the acting classes at Stanford, and this was around 1979. And interest grew. Students came from the business school and engineering in different parts of the university who didn't care about being actors, but they were somehow getting something from the improv work that helped them become more confident, freer. They had fun doing it. It wasn't the try to produce something a particular way, which often is the sort of more of the scientific method. By the way, it occurs to me that I'm something of an interloper, because the umbrella that is sponsoring this is Improvisation.Science. And I have to say, I'm not a scientist at all. In fact, I sort of shy away from measurement studies and things. I appreciate them, and I'm grateful that some others are doing that work, because a lot of people seem to need those numbers to understand. But I think many years in a classroom, I've discovered that the improv ideas, improv mind, is a really positive mindset. I keep hearing from students what they're learning, rather than me telling them, you're going to learn X, Y, and Z in the classroom, and then it will be easy for you. But for so many years, I would teach a class in improvisation, and at the end of the quarter, instead of giving them an exam, I would ask for an essay saying, what sticks in your mind or life from being in this class? And what I got from those essays over the many years is an incredible display of ways in which improv changed people's lives, made them more confident, more willing to take risks. So I got these testimonials, and the range of ways in which improv is beneficial is remarkable. There are those, I'm sure, in the great improv community of the world, we're cheerleaders. We believe it can change the world. It probably can. My specialty within all of this, I think, is the improvisation in everyday life. And the book came because I was teaching continuing studies at Stanford, which is the adult education part. And so I had grown-ups coming at night after my undergraduate classes, and they to I called it Everyday Spontaneity Improvising Your Life. And the students would come back after class, businessmen and engineers and teachers and housewives, and say, you know, these ideas are making a really big difference in my life. I find that I'm a little kinder to my husband. I'm more willing to say yes or try things. And so the students from the evening classes said, you know, this is pretty good stuff for human beings. You should write a book. And so I many years ago, I started working on the book. And because I was in an academy in the university, the first 2 or 3 drafts of the book were academic texts. How to improvise in 12 lessons with lots of footnotes and lots of references to other teachers and scholars. And it wasn't a bad book, but I kept kind of throwing in little anecdotes that editors came back when I tried to offer the book and saying, you know, Patricia, I think you've got 2 books here. You've got an academic textbook, properly referenced, and you've got a little sort of, I don't know, self-help book of some sort. You should decide which you want to do and do one or the other, not both. I thought, well, that's wonderful advice. I really want to write a little self-help book, I guess, or a philosophy book. And I think that's what Improv Wisdom finally came to be. It was taking all the things I'd known and learned from travels around the world, from reading and thoughts of coming from Eastern philosophy, especially life experience in the classroom. And then it got folded into what became Improv Wisdom. And I have to make a huge shout out to the editor, Bell Tower Books of Random House, who worked with me. She was a brilliant woman, Toinette Lepi, and she was one of the early translators of the Tao Te Ching. So she had a kind of an understanding and a mind of Eastern thought that really helped me shape the book. And so I'm very grateful to her. So the book now has been moving around the world. I think of the book as my daughter. She's my child, and she was born in 2005. And now she has some sisters. It's in 9 languages. And so she's moving around the world. And I get to sit here in California and sometimes hear from a reader who's found value. So thank you to those.
That sounds wonderful, and it reminded me of Van Gogh, who wanted to become a pastor, but he was not good enough as a pastor, so he started painting. So thanks God that he was a painter. So perhaps it's good that you not became just a professor, just another one, but to create, you know, this kind of book. And you started teaching or facilitating improvisation at university 40 years ago. So that was when I was born. Now, 40 years later, there are still hardly no courses at universities or education worldwide in which they try to show what improvisation means. Now, what does it mean, improvisation and wisdom, for you personally, or what can other people also learn? Because you mentioned that they're engineers, they're business people, housewives, so, you know, very different and heterogeneous group of people. What would you say? What is one of the core principles or the wisdom that you can learn or perhaps explore using improvisation in some kind of form?
Oh, thank you. What a nice question. Well, first of all, it's sort of, what could I say? To even use the word wisdom in the title of a book, to say improv wisdom, as if I somehow have that, is a bit of a stretch. But I say in the book, I'm standing on the shoulders of some very wise and wonderful teachers and those that influenced me over the years. Improvisation, as I see it, is a way of doing things, a Tao, a mindset. It's so much more than a set of rules for how to make theater or music. There's some deep, deep human wisdom, I think, that comes through a simple maxim like say yes or yes and. And we all know that that's a foundational principle in improvisation. You simply can't improvise with others unless you are using that rule or that wisdom. And so what does yes and mean? Of course, we can't like or say yes to all of the world's so polarized. But if you think about the polarization in our world right now, politically especially, that if they had a little dose of improv wisdom, a little dose of yes and, we might, if we could get our leaders to listen to each other just for a moment, to hold each other's ideas as possibility, things might begin to change. So there's deep human wisdom, such as that odd rule of go along with it. It's not about agreeing, but it's about opening yourself to the idea or the offer that's there and respecting the person that gave it. We've lost respect in some ways for one another, and have pulled into ourselves and are taking care of ourselves. So improv reminds us that we have to shift the attention from ourselves onto our partners and the reality and whatever is going on in the room. We have to pay attention. So I've kind of boiled down, the book has 13 maxims, things like one piece of advice is to be average, which you might imagine is a kind of odd thing to say to a group of Stanford students. But if you think about it for a moment, behind that advice is the reality that when we are trying hard to do our best, to give the most perfect interview or to make everyone like us, we're likely not accessing our most natural ability to think and feel. We're all natural improvisers if we don't let our thinking mind get in the way. So it's probably why I'm not drawn to science, because science strongly uses the brain and the intellect, and we must use those, of course. But I think we lose our touch with intuition, with our ability to shift from self to other, and improv can help us do that.
So you have a long experience of improvisation, of facilitating that, of teaching that. So where do you think, or what do you wish for the next years or decades, where this field could go, or the mindset could go? So what do you wish for your daughters, so meaning your books? What would you say would be helpful or supporting for the world as it is right now?
Well, I do think that the ideas that improv can teach and can lead people to are what we need. I would encourage everyone who has tasted the spark of what improv can do to use it not only in their own lives, but where they can, to share it and teach it. I mean, I would love to see improv in all the curriculums of the world, so that in high schools and in colleges, we begin to study it more, not only as a science, but as an art and as a deep philosophy. So I can also see improv classes being hosted in philosophy departments, not just in theater arts, or psychology departments, for example. Right now at Stanford, the design school teaches improv. We started the Stanford Improvisers in 1991, and now that's grown to a group of 300 around the world. And they are improvising, maybe not as teachers, but they are taking it as doctors and pediatricians and lawyers and into all sorts of wonderful fields. So I think I would hope the world could use this wisdom in different ways, and we'd all teach and share more, whether it's formally or otherwise.